once again. It's Topper from Blue Sky Citadel. This is going to be the last class of the introduction to API testing, and we're just going to be, I'm just going to be doing some quick, more like a mop-up of what we've done, just like a quick summary of what we've done previously. And then we'll look at Postman, so Postman test, just do a few of them and then we'll call it a day. In the last class, we've spoken about what are GET requests, what is a POST request, and I hope you guys can see my screen. I want to present to continue. Oh, sorry. So, okay, I hope you guys can see my screen. All right, so I'll be going through some differences between what's a GET request and a POST request is, and then we'll be going through Postman quickly. So we spoke about GET request. The GET request is a request where you're getting data from the server, while a POST request is you are creating the data, you are creating a resource in the So one is POST is creating a resource, GET is extracting or requesting a resource, right? So parameters are in the URL. So what are parameters? If you look at Postman, right? If you look at this particular request, okay, so if you look at this particular request, right? So in a Postman, in what they call a path parameter, we spoke, I think 2 classes before, the class before the last one, I think I explained to you what an API, URI or URL looks like. Now, if you are looking at, so this is where a path parameter is. So if you send it in curly braces, right, within like, for in this particular instance, I'm looking at the car ID. This is what they call a path parameter. So the base URL is your is the domain name. Anything after the base URL is the path, is the endpoint. And within your endpoint, you have a path parameter. So in this particular instance, in this particular API, we are looking at /cars/car ID is the path parameter. So parameters are in the URL, while in the post, parameters are both in the URL and body. So for a post request, if I go to a post request, right, if I go to the body, yeah, now in this particular instance, I have not assigned any parameter to my to the body, but if I show you another request, right, this one. All right, so if I show you this one, so I have hard-coded, I've added my parameter to my body. This is a post request. I've added the parameters to the body, and the reason why I did this is because I have declared this as an environment variable. So I've said what is my email, and this is the value of my email. I've added this to my environment variable. So in a nutshell, this is basically what I've done there. So if I go to, I'll just show you quickly how you can do this. So if you create a new collection, let's say you call it tests, and then I don't want this, and then you test, and I then say no, hold on, guys. Got it. Let me just delete it. All right, so if I add a new collection, yeah, I call it tests. And then within my collection, why is it bringing this up? Okay. So I want to create, or rather than doing this way, I'll just go back. I'll create a request. So let's say my request is HTTP, let's use this one, anything, right? Let's use this URL. Now, if I want to add this to a collection, I'll do save. Yeah, and then it will ask me, I can create a new collection here. So if I click on a new collection, I click a new collection and I say test, yeah, test collection. Let's call it test collection. Yeah, and I click create. Yep, and I click save. Right. So if I come back to this, if I come back to this side of my screen, if I look for test collection, yep, this is my test collection, right? Now, to create an environment variable, all I just need is to come here. If you look at this, something that looks like an eye, if you click on that, right? No, so if I say no environment, click on an eye. This has to show no environment. Click on an eye, and then you can add your environment variable. So in this particular one, let's go back to, let's say I put this domain name, yeah, as my variable. So I call it domain, let's call it domain URL, yeah. And the value is this one, and my current value is this one, right? And I save it, right? So if I go back to this one, if I go back to my request, so the request is sitting within my collection, right? Test collection, right? If I go back to my request and I just do a drop down and I say, okay, I want my, okay, I named it, sorry, I named it as new environment. So let me update it. So I need to rename it. I should have added a name to it. So let's call it tests environment, env, yeah. So if I go back to my collection and I click on test environment, right, and I say, okay, and I just put a curly brace, yeah, it automatically gives me the domain URL, right? And then I add my path, yeah, / anything, right? So that's how you set up your environment, environment variable. So for instance, if you are going to be passing anything, so let me make this request. What is it saying? View console error. No, I think there's something I need to do. Oh, okay. Current value. I hope can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, all right. So that's fine. So that's fine. That's all I wanted. So in a nutshell, so that's how you add the environment variable. All you just need to do is make sure that if you select no environment, you click this eye, you click add, you add whatever you want to add to it. You give it a name, you add your variables and all that. So that's how you add an environment variable. So the one I just created now, let's say I want to add an environment for, let's say you want to put something like email, and then you want to assign a value to it, let's say xyz at email.com, right? So the current value is going to be that, and the initial value is going to be the same as the current value, and then you just save it, right? So by the time you go back to your test, and then let's say your test, this is a post request, and you want to add a body, right? Let's say you want to add a body with a JSON, whatever, JSON objects. So once you open up your JSON file, you type email. Was it like email, and then your colon, and then if you add your double brackets, right? Yeah, it picks up the email. Okay, you need to set an environment. So you need to set an environment. So once you do the double quote and type email, can you see that it's coming? Can you see that the value is coming straight from the environment variable? So you need to make sure that it is pointed to that environment variable, right? So that's how you do that. So the post request, you can have a parameter in the body of the post request. While for a get request, you have the parameter in the URL. So a get request does not have a body. Going back to Postman, a get request, so ignore this one, right? So this is for a post request, right? But a get request does not have a body because we are requesting data from, we are requesting information from we are requesting data from the API for the resource. So it doesn't have a body. It is only when you are creating something that you have a body, right? So why a post request will contain a body. So I've shown you what a post request is. Example of that is this one, which I showed you earlier, right? This is a post request. I'm doing authorization into this. I'm doing authorization into this API, and I have to say who I am, my email, and my password, right? So and then it gives me who I want. It gives me once I run it, it gives me a success 200. Now, GET requests can be cached. So just like we have cookies, right? So what it means is that you have your clients, which is maybe your UI, and then you have your backend, which is your server. So for frequent requests, right? For instance, if you do www.google.com, right? And you go into your headers, right? You can see that at this point, there's no cookies here. So if you go into the headers, you can see that there's no cookie here. There's no cookie here, right? So there's no cookie here. But once I send this request, yeah, and automatically it gets a cookie. The request is cached. The reason why it does this is because rather than having to go to, because it knows that rather than having to do this the next time, right, it stores this information to say, okay, this information that I have gotten from google.com, it has stored it as a cookie, right? It has given me this cookie header, so that when I'm extracting that information again, it doesn't have to reach the backend. There's a middle layer between the client and the server. There's a middle layer. So frequently retrievable information, is stored in a cookie, so that you don't have to carry out this particular request. It doesn't have to go out for instance, basically this is in a nutshell, because he knows that I'm going to get google.com. So rather than the information I will draw from google.com, which is basically this website. So every time I hit that particular gate, it has already stored that information on my Postman with this value. So it doesn't have to retrieve that. It stores that information there and gives me that information anytime I call it, right? But for a post request, that does not happen. The reason is that it is never cached. The reason is being that because you are creating a value, you are creating a new resource on that particular API, there's no need for you to cache that particular, because every time you are sending a request to an API for a post. So if I look at this example, yeah, I am creating, I don't want to, let me not confuse you with that. So if I look at this particular, if you're logging in, if I look at this particular example for this post request, right? If I look at the headers, you can see that nothing is cached in my, you see, so if I send it 100 times, it's not even doing anything because I need to turn it on. But you can see that I've done this one, I've used this previously, and there's no cookie. So cookies it's never cached because you are creating a new resource all the time. So it doesn't cache, that particular request for a post request. But for a GET request, because it expects that at every point in time when you go to that particular API and you request that information, rather than it going to the backend and saying, okay, give me a fresh instance of that application, it caches it. It stores it as within a middle layer, and then gives you that response every time you call that particular request. But for a post request, you are creating a resource in the backend. So, and it expects that when you are creating a new one, at every time you make that post request, you should have a new value. So I'll show you that later as well. So quickly moving on, between post and put, right? So post is used for creating data and may be used for updating data as well. So there are some instances whereby you have a particular endpoint that you can use a post request to also update it, to also carry out updating as well, while put is used for updating the data. I'm laying strong emphasis on this because this is how, without knowing this without knowing the differences here, you find it very hard to do testing with of APIs. So parameters are both in the body and the URL. So sometimes you can there are some APIs that allows you to pass the body within the API. It's just within the URL. I don't have an example of that in this particular instance, but I would I'll maybe in subsequent classes, subsequent sessions in future, then I'll be able to provide you with that. So, and also put as well, you can also have parameters in the URL and in the body. So you have some APIs where, this information that we are passing here, email, it might be like maybe slash email, maybe something like slash email. Okay, so I actually did one at work yesterday. So the example is something like this. So the example is something like, maybe you have something like this. You have your email. So because I'm setting my email here, and then you have your password. So your developer will tell you, whoever is asking you to do this testing will tell you. Will tell you. So you have something like this, right? It's basically going to be something like this as well. But they will tell you, they will give you the URL and say to you that, okay, this is a post request. You can send your parameters within the URL and also within the body. Is basically the same thing. I'm not sure whether I can do this. Let me see if I can. Let me see whether this will work. Let me try and run this. So while that is starting, let me see if I do that. I want to see whether okay, that's fine. So my server is one. Yeah, bad request. So okay, this particular endpoint does not take so this particular endpoint does not take the parameters in the URL in the URL, so that wouldn't work. So if I go back, I hope I'm not confusing anybody. If I'm confusing you, please let me know. Okay, that's fine. So that's what I'm saying. That so your developer will tell you, okay, you can put the parameters in the URL, or you can put the parameters as the body. So that's what that is in a nutshell. So we've said post requests are never cached. No matter how many times you run it. If you look at my headers, I've just run it now. You can see no cache. They are never cached. It will never give you a cookie. If I run it 100 times, I'm running it several 100 times. Sending request. So I've run it several times. If you look at the header, there's no cookie, right? But if you go back to this one for google.com, if I run it, every time I run it, if you look at your console, you will see that if I've run, which one have I run? Okay. I don't want to clear my console. Okay. So if I run this one, so you can actually see that I'm running the Google one, and I'm not even getting, okay, this is it, right? So this is the google.com. So if you look at it, the cookie is stored here. This is the cookie that is stored here for the get one. So it's a get requests, and then it stores the cookie. So the cookie gives me the information as soon as I want it. It stores my session on that. Well, if I go back and look at the post one, you will see that the post one never, if you look at the response headers, request headers, sorry, you don't have a cookie. So that's it on that one. So the same thing for put request as well, is never cached. And so here, you don't, so when you're doing a post request, right, no identifier is required. The thing is that because we are creating a new resource, right, so what it means that, so, okay, what, I'll come back to this one. I'll explain this one to you later on. So for put request, identifier mandatory because you want to tell the API or the endpoint what you want to update. So this is basically what it means. So for instance, if you have an endpoint that has list of names, right? You want to update, you want to change one name to another value, right? So you need to say, okay, I want to change ID number 10 to, so let's say you want to update this particular endpoint, right? So for a put request, maybe you want to, okay, let's just do that. Let me just do it so it makes life easy for, let me just show you. So if I do post number 3, okay, so post number 3. So if I want to get one, what is this one? Comment get. All right. So if I want to update this body, right, to something else, I want to update it from. I want to update this body to, let's say, XYZ, right? So if I create another. If I duplicate this, let's duplicate it. And do a put request and do a body right like that. So are you guys following me? Has anyone got any question? Yeah, if you guys are following me, somebody just say yes. Or if I'm confusing you, say no. So I just want to check something quickly. This is a deviation from what I'm doing. Okay, so put, okay. Can somebody, can you type yes if you can hear me? Okay, and I hope you guys are following me. Any question? No question. Okay, that's fine. So let's say I want to. All right, let's say I want to change this particular. I want to change this particular value to something else, right? So you can remember that in this, when I did my get requests, I got it as I got ID number 1, body as some comments, and post ID, blah, blah, blah. So let's say I want to update it, right? I want to make it, I need to provide an identifier. I need to say, okay, which value am I updating? I need to give it an identifier, and I need to provide some comment. I want to change the comment to, let's say, today is Tuesday, right? So let's see, I hope it works and all that. So if I send it, it's giving me false or not found. I'm not sure whether, you know what, let me know. I'm not sure whether this API can do a put request. So let me not say it. I'll show you something else. Okay. All right. So in view of what we have discussed, let's quickly go through. Can you use the update feature to change it? Updates. Can you explain what you mean by update feature? This is not a class for BAs, so this is a class for testers. So Abdullahi, can you expatiate on what you asked? Can you use update feature to? Can you unmute yourself and speak?
Yeah, hi there. So basically, I know there's an update feature instead of using. So if you click where it says get, on a drop down.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think there's an update, right?
No, there's no updates.
Oh, okay. No, I thought it was an up. Okay, no, I thought it was update. Okay, my bad.
Yeah. So let me show you. Let me use this example to show you what I was referring to. All right. So if you look at this particular API, right? So this is an API that basically, if you look on result, okay, I need to change this to car fleet, right? So if you look at this API, basically, this is an API that makes use of this Swagger. So Swagger, let's quickly Google it. What is Swagger in Open API? I don't just want to. So what's is Swagger? Yeah. All right. So if you look at the definition of Swagger, it says Swagger. So Swagger is a documentation for APIs, open APIs, and basically what it means is that Swagger allows you to document your APIs, right, and makes it accessible for for any kind of um, um, any kind of infrastructure, any kind of uh, just makes it open to all kinds of all kinds of use. So whether you're writing Java code or C# code or whatever code you are writing, it allows you to make use of that API, and it's also for documentation purpose. Well, that is just paraphrasing it in a nutshell. Well, let's quickly look at this definition quickly. So Swagger allows you to describe the structure of your API so that machines can read them. Yeah. So that is basically what I said. So it makes it accessible to all kinds of users. The ability of APIs to describe their own structure is the root of all awesomeness in Swagger. Why it is so great? So well, by reading your API structure, we can automatically build beautiful and interactive API documentation. So in a nutshell, Swagger provides open API and allows for documentation of API. So you can read what Swagger is, right? So so if you look at this particular Swagger documentation for this API, it's a car fleet management, right? We'll be looking at, so so it gives us definition of what we can do with this API, right? So it's just like a document that describes what that particular API does. So the API is car fleet management. So if you look at this one, right, we have endpoints, which is cars/cars. This endpoint gets you all the cars, right? We have another, so this is a GET request with an endpoint of /cars. So we have another one, it says post request with an endpoint of /cars, So as I said to you, this one, you are getting cars. So if I go into it, right, it says no parameters. It doesn't allow you any parameters, but, for any document. So when you get to a place of work, right, if they give you Swagger, so if they say, okay, there's a Swagger document for API, all it means is that document what your API can do and what your API cannot do, right? So it will list you all the path, like this /cars, which is your endpoint. It will tell you whether this particular request, gets request for this particular endpoint takes a parameter or no parameter. So for this one, it says no parameter. It tells you what your responses will look like. So if it's a successful response, it's a 200 and it will, description is okay. And it will give you a response body, right? This is your response body. If it is a 401, 401 means unauthorized. It will tell you unauthorized. If it's a 403, it will say forbidden. If it's a 404, if what you are looking for is not there, if nothing exists in the API, it will say not found, right? And then it gives you the opportunity to try it out. So if you say, it says, okay, let's try it out. And because this one is nothing, because it doesn't require any parameter, if you click execute, right, it gives you, so this is it, right? So it goes into the database and then it gives you this. This is the response body. So in a nutshell, if I try that out, I've already done it. We don't have to create it afresh again. Just hold on, I need to close some stuff. Let's just close some stuff that we don't need. So if you look at this, right, I've already shown you, I have my environment variable set up already. So if you look at my environment variable, it's just, I've created it for this one. All I have is the URL, base URL. I know I've showed you that already. So if you look at my requests, if I go back to my collection and I look at my get cars, right? We are basically doing the same thing here. Endpoints / get cars. So my base URL is my URL and my endpoint is /get cars. So if I send it, the same thing I have on the Swagger documentation is what I have here. So a lot of I've seen examples where people are, where you have to first of all look at your Swagger documentation to validate what is coming on. So Swagger will be like is a document that basically tells you, okay, when you run a GET request on your endpoint, this is what your response should be like, right? So the same thing. So basically, it's like I'm testing what my documentation is telling me, right? So if you see anything that is contrary to what is expected of the documentation, you raise it as a bug, you discuss with the developer and raise it as a bug, right? So it says I get 200, which is okay. I get my data in this format. Yeah. It says I get my data in this format, list it, and then it also says I have response headers. So in my response headers, it says that I should have these values set there, right? So let's go and check whether we have that in the response headers as well. So my server, it says cowboy. Yeah, my server is cowboy. Dates, today's dates. Connection type, application/JSON, connection, keep alive. So if you go here, it says connection, keep alive, content type, application/JSON, dates, blah, blah, blah. And then what else? Via, blah, blah, blah. So that is basically what that does, right? So let's move on quickly. So, and if you're not passing, if you don't, because we don't have any authorization, right? Just because this does not require any form of, so let's say this particular API requires any form of authorization, right? And you don't pass it, then you get a 403. I'm sorry, you get a 403, which is you get a 401, which is unauthorized, right? And if you are doing any form of action, let's say, let me see if I can. So let me see if I do. I'm trying to see how I can do a 404. This one, because this is not a real endpoint, right? So it might be difficult for me to show you how to get a 401 or 403. But you will get a 401 if this endpoint, if you are testing an endpoint that requires authorization, right? So let's say it requires authorization and I'm doing a GET request and I don't put in my authorization code, or maybe my bearer token, or my bearer token, or my API key. If I don't get that, then I get a 401 saying I'm unauthorized. Authorized means you don't have the authorization to look at that resource. And 403 is forbidden. So maybe you are doing something that is the API does not allow you to do. Even if you have the authorization or blah blah blah, you don't have. Okay, so let me see if I can do something. Okay, so if I do that, it still gives me 200. Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can do something. So where ID equals to 100. So if I'm looking for something that it still gives me, yeah, because this is not a real endpoint, so it will continue to give you 200. But if you're in the place of work, so basically what I've done here is I've done a query parameter. So I've said, okay, you can see that this thing has come on. So let me show you again. So you can see that before I did that query thing, it might be it might be because of the limited time, I'm just rushing these things, but it might be confusing to a lot of people. But so what I did was I'm asking it to give me ID. So if you look at my response, I have ID 123, right? That is what I have ID. Yeah. If I want to do a query now, I want to query my endpoint and say, okay, Mr. Endpoint, give me. So can you see that immediately I put that question mark, this thing becomes green. If I take it out, it's not green. But once, and this one as well, because I said bearer token, it becomes green. If I say nothing, then if I say don't, this one does not even accept anything, so it's blanked out. And this one as well, okay, because I kept some information here. If I say none, oh, all right, okay, if I say none, it becomes, whatever. But just ignore this for now. Just ignore this one. I saved this URL there for my personal use. Forget about it. So once I ask this to say, okay, Mr. API, give me value, gets me car with ID 100. Yeah. If this API was a real API, we don't have any car value with ID 100, so I should get a 404. 404 means not found, but because it's a dummy website, it doesn't do anything, and that's why it is working, right? But when you are testing real APIs, if you're looking for something that does not exist in the API, you should get a 404. And if you are testing the API without providing your authorization, right, then you should get a 401, right? And if you are doing something maybe like if you are doing something that is illegal, maybe entering junks, maybe like entering junks like this, right? Let's try. Let's see if it's gonna do something. Entering junks like that and clicking. Okay, so yeah, so on this one, it's giving me a 404 because it's still thinking that I'm looking for this endpoint that does not exist. So that's why it's giving me a 404. But some APIs like this, if you type it like that, it should give you a 403. That means you know what, you are doing something that is not right, or it should give you a 400. It means it's a bad request or something. So let's see. Let me see if I can make it 4. Yeah, it's still so this API is limited in functionality. That's just all I will say. Has anyone got any question? So I've shown you a query parameter. I've shown you path. So tonight I've shown you what a path parameter is. I've just shown you what a query parameter is. This is what a query parameter is. I'm calling for something. I'm querying the API to give me an ID that is 200, and then it automatically populates it here for me. It says my key is ID, my value is 200, and then if I run it, it doesn't do anything, right? It doesn't, it shouldn't give me 200. It shouldn't give me. It should come back with the 404, but because we are testing dummy API. So I can also say, Mr. API, give me a manufacturer that is Tesla. So if I say manufacturer, if I say manufacturer that is Tesla, give me manufacturer that is Tesla. If it is a real API, it should come back with these two values, ID 2 and 3. So let's try. Let's see if it works. So it's still, because it's a dummy website, that's it. So don't focus on this too much. But I've shown you different ways of query. So I've done a query for you, a query parameter for you now. So going back to the Swagger documentation that we are checking, let's move to the next one. So to post a car, to add a car to our database, right? We have to do the URL/cars to add a car. Now, it says that for you to add a car, you need to put something in, you need to put some values in your body, right? So the value, so it says that you need to add a value. Example, you say that build is 0. So the reason why it's saying that build is 0 is because we don't know how many, we don't know the we don't know the build, so we leave it at 0. We don't know the ID. So because maybe our data, maybe our endpoint that has like 500 IDs, so we don't know which one is the last one. So we want the API to automatically assign an ID for us rather than specifying, okay, Mr. API, I'm adding a car and I want you to assign an ID of 4 to it. So we just allow it to automatically process it and give it, the last, the following ID. And then the manufacturer, maybe you want to say manufacturer is BMW or Mercedes, and model of the car, you say, maybe it's a C-class or S-class or whatever. And then the value, the body parameter, the body you are sending is, the body parameter must be content type. The parameter content type for the body must be application/JSON. So if you look at this as well, if you post something successfully, it should give you 200. Sorry, hold on a second. So if you post successfully, you should get a 200. If something is, so if it goes okay, you should get a 200. Then if a resource is created, you should get a 201. If you are posting without having authorization, you should get a 401. If you are posting something, maybe you are posting something that is not, maybe you're adding another value. Okay, let's say you're saying, okay, ID 0, manufacturer is Mercedes, model is C-class, and you're saying maybe tire type is Pirelli. You know that the body, the payload, they call this a payload, right? The payload does not have anything else apart from, so the payload does not have anything else apart from build, ID, manufacturer, and model. So let's say you're adding something else to it now. It might say to you, okay, this is forbidden. You might say 403. So if you recall, I told you that 400 errors are user errors, are client errors. Client errors, they are from the clients, So there are people, there are user errors, people causing the error. And anything 500 is from the backend, from the server errors. So, right. And then if you do something that is not, I don't know, that is not located, if you are posting, so to be honest, it's very hard for you to do a 404 for a post request. I would rather say maybe like if you are posting something that is already existing in the database, you get a 409, which is conflict. But it would be so hard to try and post, get a 404. I'm just thinking in my head. Yeah, so if this course is not for you, you can drop off. This is for people that are interested in testing or want to know API. Some people have been complaining that this is for BAs or not. This is not a BA training. It's for
Yeah,
people that want.
sorry, so, hello.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah. This is for testers and developers. Yeah, if I may
Yeah.
say. Yeah.
Okay.
But of course,
Okay.
BA can benefit from that. Even Scrum Master cool as well. Because these days, yeah, even BAs, if you are a BA and you are a technical BA, some BA roles are technical. You might have to be writing stories about APIs as well. All right.
Yeah.
So you need to know all these, methods actually that Topper was talking about, post, get, and the likes. So.
Okay. Yep. All right. So let's go to Postman and quickly show you what this is, what this looks like. All right, so I've done it before. I'll just, I did it so that it make things faster for us rather than having to. So the endpoint is post/car. You're adding a car, right? So let's try it out. So on Swagger, for you to, so let's say one scenario I'll give you is this. Let's say your developer is still building the API, but they're giving you a ticket to go and test, and they're giving you the documentation, which is on Swagger, right? Now, for you to start planning ahead, okay, you don't want to, okay, you want to say, okay, you want to test this post request, and you know the endpoints, So this is, they are saying that if you pass this value, right, in the payload, and then you click execute, then you should have it 200. Okay, so no, it's saying 400 on what is this 400 undocumented? This is I'm confused now. So hold on. So 400. Saying bad request. All right. Okay. I don't know what's up with that one, but if you do the right thing, right? If you no. The reason being that I didn't assign anybody to it. So let's say this is BME and BMW, and this is Z1 or something. Yeah, and then build. You execute that. And it's still saying 400. I don't know why. Let's go. So if you look at this example here, this is the path, and this is the body, right? Okay, I think because I didn't add the build, so the build is for in this particular instance. So the definition of your payload will be given to you by your developer. right? So like this one now, I think the build is, let's say if I call it 2020, then it should one, yeah, build year. So if you execute it, yeah, can you say okay, 200? So that was what was missing. So the build, so the definition of the whatever your payload is will be, if you don't understand what your payload is, your developer or or your product owner or whatever, your technical product manager or whatever, they would give you definition of what the spec is. So definition of what each and of what this value key value pairs is, they will give you the definition. So going back to, so whatever, so we tested it on Swagger. He told us that it's a 200. This is the response body. This item has been created for us. So in this particular instance, because we didn't assign the value to the ID, the API automatically give us the value, and then the manufacturer is what we called it, the model is what we call it, and the build year is 2020, and this is the response headers and all that. So you know what I did earlier, where I didn't have a value for the build and I ran it. So those are the kind of ways in which you can do different testing. So it says a 400. This is a bad request. It's saying it's a bad request. It threw that out straight away. And even if you look at the list of responses, the 400 is not there. The 400 is not there. So, but these are ways in which you can test things and validate that, okay, this API how does it respond when I do something that is not expected? Does it give me what does it give me, and all that. So imagine if I sense this, so it says that the build here is required. Imagine if I send it with a 0 build here and it's giving me 200, you need to report that as a bug, because that's not what's expected. So the same thing that we did on Postman, on Swagger, we do it here as well. So I'm saying that, my build day is 2019. I'm leaving it out. So if I do a GET request now, let's quickly do a GET request on this API. I want to see whether whatever your Swagger has built, I can. So yeah, all right. So this is the value which I just created on Swagger. Now, so to be honest, you can also use, at if your Swagger, some Swagger documentation, they are static, they are not connected to anything, but some of them are, so it's just the documentation. But when you have real application, your application is separated, maybe for security reasons, it's separated from the URL is not even open to the general public, so you cannot even access it. But because we are testing the demo website, everything is linked together. That's why you can see whatever I'm posting here. But in a place of work, the documentation will be detached from your main application. So whatever you do there, it's just this will just be like an example. But what you do on your main application will not be appearing on your Swagger documentation, will not be appearing when you're testing the real endpoint. So for this particular, so this is the same thing that we'll be doing here. So if I go here and I say, okay, let's change this to 2022. And then we see, I don't know, let's call it or something. And we say let's call it AZ. I don't know, AZ, right? So if I post it, it's a post request. So you can see that I won't go through the payload because I explained how you can validate and make sure your payload is correct. I spoke about that last week, so I won't go into those details. So okay, so you're saying 400 bad error, maximum car codes, blah blah blah. Rejected value. So you're saying is so if you look at my screen, this is rejecting. So one good thing is also that you need to know is that you need to be able to read your response body and all that. So it says it's rejecting 2022 as the year. So let's give it the year before. So it's still rejecting that as well. So let's make it, what did we put here? Was it, I think 2020 or something. Yeah, okay, so it says, okay, success. When we go and retrieve all the when we go and retrieve all this, you can see that this is what I posted here, and this is what is. So it's like, so I posted it without giving it an ID. Yeah, I didn't give it an ID, but the API is so wide, is so how will I say it? It's so knowledgeable enough to know, okay, my last ID was 7, the next one that they'll be sending will be 8, right? So if you go back to my, what did I show you? What I was saying to you earlier, for a post request, no identifier is required. So depending on the API, to be honest, so some APIs might require that when you are doing a post request, you need to specify, you need to provide an identity. Some may not, but in this particular instance, it doesn't require to provide an identity. You know, so but everything will be documented in your Swagger documentation to say, okay, this is what it does, this is what it doesn't do, this is what you expect, as what you should not expect. So going on to the next one, put, right? So when we said put is to update cars, right? So for you to update something, it must exist in the database, right? And they are saying that, you know, this is the body, you need a payload. You know, the payload is, you know, is in this value. You need to specify. You need to specify everything that you on this particular instance, you know, because you need an identifier. So if you want to update something, you need to specify what you want to update. So you need an identifier. Always remember that when you are doing a put request, you need to specify an identifier, because there might be, for instance, you might have let's say you have okay, this one, let's say you have duplicated, but let's say you have this one as Tesla Model 3, and then let's say you have another Tesla that is Model 3 2019 or 2017. You need something to differentiate what you're updating so that it won't give you a conflict. So that's why when you are doing a put request, you always need an identifier, right? So the same thing goes in the documentation, specifies what is a success code, what is a 201, you know, how to achieve a 201 and all that. So, and then it gives you the opportunity to try it out as usual. So if you look at this put request now, this is to update car. If you look at the body, I've done it previously. You need to specify. So if I take out this, let's try and simulate and see what happens if I don't put an ID. So let me take out this ID. If I don't say what I want to update and I click on, so it's basically the same thing. Put, the endpoint is /cars, right? So if I say, okay, give me this, you see, it says it's a bad request, and it will tell me the reason why it's a bad request. Argument says, this one says argument no. So it says, can you see detailed message, provide an ID. You need to tell me what I need to update, right? You need to provide an ID. Yeah, so it says I need an ID. So depending on what you are testing, you know, the response body will say to you, it's very important that if you get any validation error, go through your response body, understand what it says, and then you can use it to solve your problem. So if I add back the ID, right? So if I go to get whatever, we have our ID for having a manufacturer of Ford, and the model year is 1969 and build is 1969, right? So let's say I just want to update ID4 to under, and I want to call it under EXR, let's say build year 2020, yeah? Build year 2020. Yeah, so if I send it, if I send it, yeah, I get 200, then it gives me a response. My body response is similar to what is expected on the Swagger documentation, right? And you know, what else does he ask me? So that's also, if I go here, yeah, so the headers will also be, it should also be the same thing with the headers as well. So if I go to, so if I now retrieve, if I now do a get call again, right? To see if it has been updated. So I go to, so you can see that when I go to my ID number 4, because I've specified the ID, it has changed the model to this value, and the build here to this value as well, right? So, right, and then, so I've shown you how to get a 400. The 400 is basically a bad request, something that, if the payload is expecting something, or the parameter is so this is a payload, body payload, right? Parameter is, it can either be a query parameter or it can either be a path parameter. Yeah. So if you're not providing an expected value, you get 400 bad requests. See, something is bad, something is bad, it's not well. Yeah. And then maybe if, for instance, I don't know whether these endpoints will do a 405 method no allow. So if you are getting, if they say, so they've specified to us that on this particular endpoint, we should do all of them are the same thing anyway, but they have different, configurations within them, what they can do if you are, and doing that. So let's say that we are trying to do a, let me see. I don't want to use anything. Let's try patch. Let's see. But it's going to, I'm not sure whether it's going to work. Yeah, okay, yeah, it did work. So, because our API documentation has said that these are the things that we can do with these endpoints, right? So these first three, /cars, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, they say you can do a put, you can do a post, you can do a get. Well, if you now, as part of your testing, you want to say, okay, they've told me what this endpoint can do, but let me see if it goes out of, let me do negative testing. So negative testing is when you are doing something that is not, you want to see the behavior of your application based on unexpected behavior, right? So when you see something that's not, when you are doing, when it behaves unexpectedly, then when you do something that is unexpected and it gives you a 200, then you know that there's an issue. So in this particular instance, it is really expected to do a get, post, and put. So, but we want to try a patch request. So it says the method no allow. So if you had tried this patch request and it gave us a 200, then you know that there's an issue. So you need to raise it as a bug. Speak to your developer and raise it as a bug, right? So the API did well on that in that particular regard. So quickly, we just do this last two, and then I'll just quickly go through some stuff again. So this is a get request. So in this particular get request, right, it says get car by ID. So if you had followed me earlier, I said when you see curly braces in your URL, it means it's a path parameter. Yeah, it's a path parameter. And I have it gets replaced by ID. So this is basically it, right? Yeah, so gets request by ID. Okay. So so if you see something like this in your URL, is a path parameter. So I don't think, did I pass anybody? All right, so yep. So one of the ways to test is, okay, you want to test that if you have a path parameter and you don't assign any value to it, what will happen? So let's go to the documentation and see what this is. All right, so if you are passing an ID, it says that an integer ID, right? You need to pass an ID. And then when you pass an ID, which it has to be an integer, and then if it is a good request, you get a 200. If you are doing it without authorization, you get a 401. If you are carrying out an illegal action on the API, you get a 403. If you're asking for a resource that is not available, you get a 404. Yeah. So, and then if you try it out, you only says, okay, let's carry out an illegal action. Let's see what happens. Okay, it's not even allowing us. So let's say we want to carry out, it says that your ID must be an integer, or if you are doing, it's not even allowing us, to be honest. So it can only be a number. Yeah, so if it's, because I called ID number 6, the response body gives me 6, right? So that is what is asking us. So quickly looking at that, because I've passed, all right, so I haven't defined what my car ID is. It's supposed to be an integer value, but I've just assigned it. I've just given it a random whatever, nothing. I've done, like a bad request to it, and it's giving me 400, which is fine. So if you can either pass your value here. If you pass 6, yeah, it gives you 6. So you can do it this way, or you can do it this. You can, is that you can pass it directly, because it says earlier, it says car ID. All you need to do is just to pass the value, which you pass 6. Or you can do it this way. You can say it says car ID. So that's it. This is the ID. So sorry. So if you come here and you see ID, yeah. So you can see that immediately I started typing my whatever, this thing becomes green, right? So if you put your whatever ID and you put the value this, let's say 4, yeah, and you send it, it gives you, the car. So you are getting your car by ID, right? So let's say we are getting, sorry, let's say we are passing an alphabet there. Yeah, or you're passing junks or whatever, or you are posting, or you are doing an illegal action, it should give you a 405. So you can, that's how you can test that API. All right, so, or if you are calling for something that does not exist, so if you are calling for something that doesn't exist, let's say we are asking for ID number 200, you should say 405. Oh, sorry, 404, yeah, which is fine. It's not available. And so as I've shown you 200, I've shown you 404, I've shown you 400. Unauthorized, because we don't have, it doesn't use a bearer token or API key, so I can't really show you this. Then 403, I don't know, 403 is mainly these two, 403 and 401. They are, usually tied with authorization or access and all that. So the last one is, let's look at the last one quickly. The last one is the delete one, right? So you want to delete a resource, remove car by ID. So in the delete as well, you need to specify what you are deleting. You can't just go and say, okay, I want to delete something without specifying what you want to delete, right? So you want to delete car, you need to provide the ID. So if I don't provide anything in my delete statement for my API, and I say, it says bad request, okay, well, so they don't allow delete method. So it's because it's a dummy website, dummy API, it says delete method not allowed, request delete not allowed. So you can't do that. So, but normally, if you don't pass any ID and you're sending the request, it's going to throw back an error and say, you need to specify the resource to be deleted or something like that. So you need to put the value here. So even if I put the right value here, at number 4, it would, okay, well, it says 200, okay, that's fine. Let's check if you have car ID number 4 any again. Yeah, so it actually worked. So why was it? So the message you gave us earlier was wrong. You shouldn't have given us that message to say it's not allowed. So I've deleted number 4, right? So you need to specify your ID of identifier for whatever you are deleting. Okay. So that is Swagger for you, and that is examples of how you can carry out requests. So a few good things to have at the back of your mind is, as you have headers in your request, you also have headers in your responses. And I've shown you query and path parameters. What else do I want to show you? So headers can be used for security. So one of the things that you need to understand is sometimes your headers will contain authorization values. So for instance, you can have authorization in you can have, there are some instances where maybe you pass your let's say you pass your bearer token here. Okay, let me just show another example. So in this one, in this particular instance, right, I have my bearer token as a value which I'm inheriting from somewhere. Yeah. And then when I go into my headers, okay, it's not showing. But there are some instances where your authorization is part of the header. So some API requires that you pass your authorization as part of the headers, and it will appear here and all that. So just know that each headers are for security. They can be used for security purpose. Some API may require security credentials to be provided. So this API, this car API that we have looked at tonight does not require any authorization. But I think the one I shared with you last week, the weather one, I think that one requires an authorization and all that. Yep, so, and then, so cookies, we've talked about cookies. So cookies are really used for APIs. They're used to store small amounts of data of the client's computer. So I showed you the example of that one where I did this one, right? So initially when I first of all did the request, there was no, initially when I created it, there was no cookie. But once I did hit send, it stored the cookie on my computer. So just just to provide some information as to who I am, where I'm requesting the information for, and also and I showed you that cookies are part of your headers as well. So the response may also contain a cookie. So if you look at your response headers as well, it may also contain a cookie. This particular one, this doesn't have a cookie, but your response headers may also. So as you are sending information, so this cookie is information to say who you are, and then when you are getting a response back, the cookie may also store content that the backend may feel that you might require often and all that. So it caches it for you so that it doesn't have to make that part. It doesn't have to make that particular request every time. It doesn't have to retrieve that particular information every time that you hit the backend. So we looked at the body, what kind of content you can send and retrieve. So apart from you sending all this information, you can also send videos. You can also send pictures. To be honest, that's for the advanced class and all that. So it's not, so but just know that you can send text messages, text, images, video, sounds, so many things. We've looked at status code. Quick way to tell if your request is successful or not. Tonight I've given you examples of success, failures, client errors, and all that. And yeah, I've not been able to. Let me see if I can show you maybe like internal server error or something. Well, all right. So I have to think about how to do that example. But basically, server errors are errors that are from the server. So let's say I am sending a request to this. I'm doing this delete action now. Let's say there's a problem with the API. The API, the backend, where the API logic is down. Then I have everything. I've done everything right, but when I click send, it's giving me a 500 or a 501 or 503. So anything that is from anything that is 5 blah blah blah, it means that the API, where the API resides, something is wrong with the code there. It is down, and this is a server error. All right, so this is a small chart of what status code groups look like. 200 is successful. So you know what 200 is now. 201 is something is created. So there are some APIs that they don't use 200, they use 201, right? So when you say anything two, you make sure it means that it's successful. You created a resource, or your request is successful. Or maybe sometimes there are some APIs that, as we are doing this get request, this get request has a body. There are some API that, they don't bring anything back. The response body is empty. Some of them will have a 204. So client errors, I've told you client errors means, they're more like, clients. So you have a client, you have a server. The client is requesting information from the server. So if the client is sending bad requests, then this, there'll be validation errors. So I've shown you, I showed you this one. Maybe let's say we don't have a build, and we click send, gives us a 400, which is a bad request because I've made a mistake, I've omitted something there, right? Or if I have everything correct and I'm not doing the right thing, my payload is skewed up. There's an error in my payload. I have a bad request. So for people that are interested in progressing their API testing career, if you rewatch this video, make notes of all these things I'm showing you. Basically, this is how to test APIs. Okay, if they are expecting you to test a 400 request, these are ways in which you can test a 400 request and all that, right? And then maybe you are doing like you are testing, you are carrying out a request that is not accepted or allowed, then you get a 405. Yeah. So this one, what was this one before? Was this one supposed to be a post? Okay. Yeah. So 400 bad requests, authorization. If you are accessing the API without providing credentials, you get a 401, and a 403 is forbidden. You know what? Let me just quickly. I want to understand. I know what forbidden is, but I really want to give you the right definition. What causes a 403? Okay, yeah. So let's say you have the right credentials to access your so let's say for instance this is asking us. Okay, let me just make it easy for you guys. So if you look at this particular API, right? This particular API, if I run it, it gives me, what have I done? Okay, I'm using the wrong environment. So this particular API gives me a bearer token, right? This bearer token. Yeah. Now, for me to be able to do a get request here, yeah, I am using a bearer token. Let's say I take out, so the bearer, so I've done some logic that automatically populates yeah, so I've done some logic. I've done some, if you want to learn this, it's for advanced course or whatever, but I'm just showing you what it means. I've done some logic that automatically takes the bearer token. So this value that I put, that is extracting the value from here, and the value is coming here. So if you look at it here, and I'm able to run that request. So let's say I say no, I put this as no off, and I send, it will give me, you see, 401. Error in authorization. I'm not authorized, right? Now, let's say I'm even authorized, right? But let's say I'm even authorized. Let's say I'm even authorized now, right? But there are some instances where you have like access, your access level, at work, So let's say I'm even passing the right token, but I am not allowed to access this resource. Then I get a 403. I am forbidden from, I do not have the permission to access the API or the page. you will notice that sometimes when you're trying to access something on the website, you get a 403 back. That's the same thing. So you provided your credentials, but you don't have permission to access that particular resource. Okay, so, and they're not found. I've showed you not found. You're making a request that does not exist you're requesting a resource that does not exist in the API or in the endpoint. You get a 404. And then the server errors is when the backend is down. You get a server error, maybe internal server error or service unavailable. You rarely see these ones. 100 error, you rarely see the request was received and understood, but hasn't been processed yet. So maybe sometimes a typical example is, which I'm thinking would fall under the category of 100 informational, which is just informational status code is. I'm just thinking, right? Maybe have you ever noticed when you send a request on Telegram, right? You get a single tick, just one tick instead of the double tick. So, okay, so it happened to me during the week, and I was just checking, okay, has my message actually been sent or not? So when I Google it, it says that, all right, the information has been received on their servers, but it has not been processed. So I'm just thinking that, you know what, if I was to query that on that particular endpoint that sends that information, maybe I'll get 100. So which is exactly similar to the request was received and understood, but it has not been processed yet. So the server already has taken that information, but waiting to process it. So that's when you get 100 source code. And then the common one, if you are very conversant with UI testing, there are some workflow there's some transactions or maybe when you click a particular website, it redirects you to something, based on a particular logic. So those ones make use of a 300, right? So anything from 300. So like for instance, 307 is redirection. So the request was received, understood, but the information available is not requested, is not available, or maybe the request is received, understood, and then it directs you to a particular page or anything like that. So yeah, all right. So we come to the end of the class, and this is going to be the last lecture. I will take any questions if anyone has any question. So if you have a question, you can type or you can unmute yourself and ask. All right, so before we go, there's something I just wanted to show you as well quickly. We can write tests as well. So you can write tests as well. So if you look at this screen, right, these are tests that validate several things, right? Postman is quite good. That it gives you the option to add, it gives you code snippets on this right side. So for instance, if I want to add, that's not what I wanted to do. So if I wanted to add a code snippet for validation of my source code, right? It automatically writes it for you. So for instance, if I run this now, it gives me a 200. If I say, okay, I want to validate whether it's a 100, right? I send it, then it says, okay, in my test results, there's one failure. And it tells you what it is, right? So that you expected to get 100, but it was a 200. So just play around with this stuff, right? And so for people that are scared of writing code, you can easily adapt this to suit any of your tests that you want to write. All right, so that is the end of the class. If there are no questions, yeah, we'll call it a day. Or has anyone got any question? All right, okay. It's nice having you all. And yeah, I wish you all the best. Bye-bye.